Yeah, I used to make fun of the theater kids. I used to, and like, but I think making fun of is different than bullying. Like, I wasn't like to their face, like, you're a virgin, but like, you know.
At just 27, Abby Govindan has already cemented her place in comedy, going viral for her razor-sharp wit, building a devoted online following, and sharing the stage with icons like Hasan Minhaj and Russell Peters. One of the youngest touring comedians in the U.S., she's selling out venues nationwide and beyond. Now, with her off-Broadway debut, How to Embarrass Your Immigrant Parents, she's blending sharp humor with raw storytelling in a show that's as hilarious as it is personal. Abby Govindan joins me now. Abby, thank you so much for joining us on That Desi Spark. We are huge fans of yours.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Also, you have me sitting on my good side, so this is just like a good day for me, like all in all.
We aim to please here and to make everyone feel their best.
I feel amazing.
I want to take it back from the beginning. When you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a great question. I really wanted to go to film school. My parents didn't let me. They were like, there's really no point in spending all this money for film school when like no one who looks like us finds success in that field anyways. So like I felt like all the other Indian kids in the Indian community like found their passion early on, and they were like driven by it, and they were really passionate about it. And I just felt like I was such a bad Indian. Like I was never particularly gifted in like science or math the way that it felt like other Indian kids were. So like the compromise I remember in college was I asked my parents if I could go to Chapman University's law film program. So it was like a joint, you graduated with like a film degree and a law degree, and they were like, fine. Like that was their compromise, but then I found that program in junior year, and then by senior year I'd started doing stand-up comedy, and I already went viral for it and amassed like a bunch of followers online. So then I gave my parents like a deadline. Like I remember when I told them that I was doing stand-up comedy, they like yelled at me until I cried, literally. Like they were like, no other Indian kid embarrasses their parents like this. Like, do you see like, you know, like all the other Indian kids, they're going to law school, they're going to med school, they're going to business school, like all these other kids have stable careers, like why are you always giving us the most trouble? So I was like sobbing in the back of the car, and I was like, okay, just give me 5 years, and if I don't make a career out of this in 5 years, then I will go to law school, no questions asked. And then I was able to monetize it within 3 years, which is honestly like insane that that happened so quickly, because you know, like a lot of stand-up comedians aren't able to do it full time until they've been doing it like 10 or 15 years. But before that happened, I think in some alternate universe, the stand-up comedy never happened. I think I probably would be in marketing or law of some sort. I was a speech and debate kid. I was always really good at arguing. Yeah.
I was a speech and debate kid too,
yeah.
So I feel seen.
Yeah, I used to make fun of the theater kids. I used to, and like, but I think making fun of is different than bullying. Like I wasn't like to their face, like you're a virgin, but like, you know, they would do the vocal, like, you know, whatever.
Like the
yeah. They would do all that shit, and I'd like whisper to my friends. I'd be like, get a load of that nerd. Like who cares about theater, you know? So I wasn't bullying them. I feel like bullying them is making them feel bad. I was making a punchline of them behind their back, but preserving their self-esteem to their face. But now I just finished a 2-week off-Broadway run, and I feel like I owe those theater kids an apology. I get it. Like I get why you would make theater your entire personality. It's so addicting.
What was your, what did you compete in speech and debate?
I was a nationally ranked champion in oratory. So I had a speech in 6th grade that carried me pretty far to nationals about religious riots in India. So I've always been very social justice minded. And then I ranked in semifinals, I think, when I was in 8th grade for public forum debate and Lincoln Douglas debate. So Lincoln Douglas is the one that you do by yourself, and I always like that one better because I didn't have to worry about whether my partner was having a good day or not. And then that makes sense for like stand-up comedy. Like I've never really jived with improv because I feel like it's so much like group chemistry and like building that chemistry up with the group, whereas my patience really only extends as far as like what I'm capable of.
Talk about the first time you went viral.
Oh my God, it was so long ago. I can't believe it was 7 years ago.
So it definitely wasn't the last time.
No, it was the first thing I ever went viral for was like some tweet about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is my favorite TV show at the time and still is. I mean, it's such a impeccable work of comedic art, and I'm just such a big Andy Samberg fan. I'm such a big Michael Schur fan. I think Michael Schur has this very amazing ability to like put together ensemble casts, and the Brooklyn Nine-Nine cast was just such a winning combo. Have you seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I love it.
God.
It's one of my comfort rewatches.
Yeah.
Which means I'm always rewatching it.
I've rewatched it maybe like 100 times, and I am such a big Lonely Island fan. Like I think they really shaped my comedic sensibilities very early on. And so I made some tweet about Jake Peralta being the only good man or something. I don't know, I was so young. I was like 20 years old when I made that tweet. And it went really viral, and it was the first time I got a lot of followers. And the first time I went viral was on Irish Twitter. So, because I was studying abroad in Ireland, and my friend Daffy, who was doing his master's at the university that I was studying abroad at, had like 1,000 followers on Twitter, which was like a lot. I mean, it still is a lot. Not to be like, haha, it's not a lot. It's still 1,000 people following you is a lot. Just because I have 180,000 now, that doesn't mean that 1,000 isn't a lot. But 1,000 is a lot. And Daffy followed back, like everyone in our friend group except me. And I was like, Daffy, like, what? Why aren't you following me back? And then he was like, Abby, you have to be funny on Twitter. You don't use Twitter. So that was the reason I started using Twitter, so that my friend Daffy would follow me back. And then he did, and he actually now is a famous rapper in Ireland. Like, so it was really cool to share an origin story with him. He was grinding, doing like the musical open mics, doing all these small shows while doing his master's in law. And I was doing all these Dublin open mics for comedy and stuff. And then during the pandemic, one of his songs with his rap duo Tabby Rax was put in a show called Normal People. Have you guys heard of it? And they like blew up overnight. And now they're so famous that if you go to any Irish bar in New York City and you stay long enough, you will hear a Tabby Rax song because there's like such a big rap group duo there. But anyway, so like I only started using Twitter because Daffy like bullied me into it. So I always attribute my entire career to him. Like I'm like, oh my God, what if you had just followed me back the moment you met me? What if you were like, yeah, I don't need you to use Twitter to follow you, I'll just follow you. Like my life would be different. I'd probably be in marketing or something right now. Thank you, Daffy. Oh, I'm on.
You use social media in such an intelligent way because I think the way you create for every single platform while still being completely yourself is something I rarely see from people online, let alone comedians. What's your strategy, or what thought, or maybe no thought, instinctiveness do you kind of think about when you create for content for social versus work for stand-up and your routines?
I think that the best technique is to just not ever do anything that goes past your comfort zone. Like I have never done or posted anything on social media that makes me uncomfortable, and I feel like people can sense that authenticity. I feel like that shines through. Like I had a really great manager a couple of years ago who she was like, and this is the early aughts of Instagram Reels where people were still figuring out like what the algorithm was and how it worked and how to get followers. And my old manager, she was like, you just need to keep posting like 3-4 Reels a week, like hit the algorithm, get a bunch of followers. And that felt wrong to me, so I didn't do it. And that manager, I mean, she has a bunch of like really famous clients. Like that advice clearly works like in for so many of our other clients. But I have so many stand-up comedy friends who have like hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram who ask me for advice on how to sell tickets. Because when people follow you on social media for content, they're not aware that you're a stand-up comedian. They're like, oh, I followed her because she had like a funny content video. But if they're not aware that you're a stand-up comedian, then they won't actively search for your like stand-up shows. They won't want to support you in that way. And so I kind of pretty early on decided the only thing I was ever gonna post on Instagram was stand-up videos. And I'm also very protective of my material because I don't want people to know what they're gonna see before they come to a show, especially with this hour that I've been touring with. So I post maybe like one reel a week, if even that. But I have this really dedicated cult following. Like they show out, I sell out most of my shows, if not all my shows. Like I sell out like 90% of my shows. And when people hear my name, they don't think of anything really other than stand-up comedian. But it took a lot of hard work to get here because I used to be just known as the girl from Twitter, and I made a lot of conscious decisions in my career to stop being known as the girl from Twitter. Like I took a humongous step back from oversharing on Twitter because I didn't want to be known as just like someone with a Twitter following. I wanted people to hear my name and think, oh, the stand-up comedian. So I really ramped up doing shows all over the country, posting reels, only posting what makes me comfortable, not oversharing, setting boundaries between my personal life and my social media life, and doing what works for each platform. Like posting stand-up videos for me never worked on Twitter, but posting tweets about my life work really well on Twitter, and posting stand-up videos on Instagram work better than just posting like a text post with funny thoughts. And so I just kind of do what feels right.
Let's talk about how some of this work has converged in your solo show. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Had an extended run,
Yeah.
and now you're going to preview it in Australia.
I've never been. I'm so excited.
What I love about something you did with the show is you brought some of those viral moments early in your career, including your very famous, I was the creator of Emily in Paris.
Yeah.
bit. And I would love to know how you went about crafting that show, writing it, and then getting it ready to perform, because you did do a lot of the PowerPoint. It was a very visual show, not just a vocal show.
Yeah, so How to Embarrass Your Immigrant Parents is the story of how I told my parents I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, how our relationship fell apart because of it, and how we built our relationship back up together after my brief stint in a mental hospital following a suicide attempt. So already, I was 20 the first time that I went viral, but virality aside, when you're 20 years old, especially when you're in an Indian family where you have a lot of cultural expectations and you're figuring yourself out, there's already a lot of like complex layers at play. And I didn't know who I was, let alone like what my relationship with my family was or what I wanted to do with my life, if stand-up comedy was even gonna pan out the way that I wanted it to. And on top of that, I went viral in like this really humongous way. And it added this layer of complexity to my relationship with my parents. And so this hour is me like talking the audience through all of that. So I started at the very beginning about like how from when I was young, I always leaned a little bit chaotic, and how like, even though, I wish that my parents were unconditionally supportive of me when I told them I was a stand-up comedian, I'm also conceding that I was always a pretty hard child to parent. And that as I grow older, now I'm 27, which is the age my mom was when she got married and she had me, and I'm realizing that like, my parents are just people figuring life out for the first time as well. And when I extended them that empathy, my relationship with them became a lot better and a lot easier. And then following my suicide attempt, I watched my parents rally around me in a way I would have never thought possible, because I watched them do the mental math of like, okay, like if the choices are like a dead daughter and an alive daughter, then we'll do anything to keep her alive. And I really value that relationship I have with them now. Like, I'm close with them in a way I never would have thought possible in like 2018 or 2019. And so it in terms of like working these moments into the hour, it was a lot of tripping and falling, because with stand-up comedy, you really need to be bad before you're good. With storytelling, you really need to be bad before you're good, because you have to figure out what works with the audience and what doesn't. One person who like extremely inspired me to pursue storytelling and stand-up comedy, who's also a producer on the show, is Daniel Sloss. And I remember the first time I was ever at Soho Playhouse was to watch his solo show X. And X is the story of how he found out that one of his best friends sexually assaulted a woman, and how his initial reaction was to be like, no, my friend would never do that. Like, I know him, he's nice. But then he saw how it destroyed the woman from the inside out, like how it literally tore her world apart. And then he realized that if more men showed empathy towards women in their plight and held their male friends accountable for sexual assault, that we could like effectively eradicate the problem of gender violence. And so it's a very like beautiful self-reflective hour where he shares with you the worst parts of himself, where initially he's like, no, that's my friend, he wouldn't do that. But then he goes on this journey and takes you on the journey with him. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. I love getting on stage. I love telling jokes. I've done an hour of stand-up comedy. It's so fun. I love making people laugh. But I love storytelling. I love storytelling. I love sharing my experience. I love conveying it in a way where the audience is on the emotional roller coaster with me. And Daniel goes so dark in his material. Like, he literally is talking about like sexual assault, you know? And I was like, and seeing him do that, like that's such a big swing to take, and it paid off in such an enormous way. And seeing him do that made me feel like I could also do something like that. And I feel like if I hadn't seen that hour, I don't know if How to Embarrass Your Immigrant Parents would be what it is today. And so what I learned from Daniel is that your experiences and the ways in which they're unique is what makes them more palatable. Like, I was like, okay, like I'm an Indian girl who's hospitalized for a suicide attempt and whose parents are now like super cool and supportive of my stand-up comedy journey. That's not a universal experience at all, especially the Indian diaspora. Any comedian will tell you is like so hard to please, because they're so looking for that like universal experience to latch onto. But instead, I did what Daniel did, which was take this like very unique experience and try to make it as universal as possible through the ways I explained it, through the ways in which I used the words. And the Emily in Paris bit initially was not part of the story because it didn't feel like it fit into the world of the story. But then I realized that, so I talk about what preceded a suicide attempt was a really viral tweet where I overshare like my relationship with my parents. And I realized like how it fit into the world of the show was talking about the ups and downs of internet virality, because it really is like internet virality is kind of like being in an abusive relationship. Like, people don't stay in abusive relationships because they enjoy the painful parts of it. They stay in the abusive relationship because there are ups, you know, throughout the whole course of it, even if they're so far and few between. And the Emily in Paris thing to happen like really changed my life. Like, so many actors and comedians like reached out to me, people I'd looked up to my whole life, like production companies who'd made the coolest movies I'd ever seen, you could ever think of, were like, hey, we want to work with you. But the downside of internet virality for me is that it really, I went viral before I knew who I was. I wish I was a little bit older when I went viral, a little bit more emotionally stable. I was like unmedicated and emotionally unstable when I went viral. And so the downside for me is it added this layer of complexity and anxiety to my already uncertain worldview. And so throughout the course of the show, I'm kind of taking the viewer on that ride with me of like being 21, figuring life out for the first time, wanting to do stand-up comedy, feeling like your parents hate you and want you dead because of it. And I just love where the show is at now. Like, I feel like it paid off so well. Like, every time I walk off stage, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I envisioned the show being when I first hopped on stage 3 years ago almost with the first version of the show. But the first version of the show was very rough. I would say it was never bad, but it was not as good as it is now.
So mental health is still such a stigma in our community. And what your work has done so bravely is to show the human side of it. What would you like to tell our younger viewers who struggle to talk about mental health with their parents? And what would you like parents who are raising now young kids or kids growing into adolescence on how to engage with their kids about mental health conversations?
I think that my direct messaging would be more productive to Indian parents because I advertise my show as like family friendly, like about anywhere, like when I go to, you know, Bay Area, San Jose, San Francisco, Milpitas, like my audience is literally half aunties and uncles because I advertise the show as like everyone, all ages should come. It's appropriate, it's family friendly. And I like what I value the most is so many parents will come up to me after the show and be like, you know, like my daughter, she's just really successful lawyer, but she left her law practice because she wants to be a painter. Or like my son, like he really wants to pursue like dancing. He wants to be a background dancer for like a famous. And I was always very stressed about the implications of it, but watching your show made me realize that my child's happiness is more important than anything else. And I think that like that would be my messaging towards parents is that like at the end of the day, you didn't have a child so that they could be a trophy for you to show off to other people. You had a child because you, hypothetically speaking, should have been ready to love them unconditionally, regardless of if they go to Harvard Medical School or if they wake up one day and say like, hey, I'm happiest like working in a Taco Bell, selling my paintings online, like living in a small apartment. And I think that a lot of Indian people specifically are so obsessed with status and wealth, especially Indian Americans, that they kind of forget that their kids are human too. And even the successful Indian Americans who feel happy and fulfilled in their career fields tend to forget that there is more to life than just status and wealth. Like in the show, I talk about how I was surrounded by the Houston Indian community and how it felt like everyone was like so gifted and talented and how I just felt like so out of place. But I've since toured the show like all over the country, and so many kids that I went to middle school with, high school with, so many Indian kids I went to temple class with would come up to me and be like, yeah, like I don't want to be, like I went to business school, I don't want to be a businessman. Like I went to med school, but I'm thinking of quitting my like, you know, medical practice. Like I'm not happy doing this. I realized I just did this because I felt obligated to. A couple of kids that I went to temple class with, they were like, yeah, I'm like not very happy with what I do for work. And I was like, oh, what's the dream? And they were like, what you're doing, stand-up comedy. And so it's, what I'm realizing is that I grew up with a very privileged life. Like even this story is very steeped in privilege. Like I had a mental health crisis. I went to the hospital for a week, which like even the fact that my parents had health insurance and were able to afford to pay for the hospital is like a big deal. And so, I like acknowledge the story is very steeped in privilege. Like mental health discussions are also very steeped in privilege in terms of like so few people have access to these resources. What I would tell younger Abby is that everything's gonna be okay. Like I used to go to open mics and not tell my family because I was afraid they wouldn't be supportive, but last week I had like a packed out, sold out show. It was like so sold out and so in demand that people were standing behind the theater to listen in. And my entire extended family came from all over the country, and they were so supportive. And I knew that my extended family would be there even if it wasn't a sold out pack show, if it was like a dingy bar show, you know, in like some basement where there was 2 other people. And so what I would tell younger Abby is to just trust the process, that everything will be okay. And also to continue speaking up for those who don't have the same privileges. Like I had access to insurance when a lot of people in the United States don't. So something that I'm really, really passionate about is universal health care, because I don't think that having rich parents should be contingent with having access to mental health resources. I was just lucky enough to be born into a wealthy family. But I think that there are so many people like me who are also experiencing mental health crises, who are struggling with mood disorders, bipolar 2, who can't afford health care, who work 70 hours a week at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell, but these corporations are too greedy to give these full-time workers healthcare, and the government is too lazy to do anything about it. And so I would tell younger Abby that everything is gonna be okay, but to also not forget those who it is not okay for yet, and to continue advocating for them.
Thank you so much, Abby, and good luck with your Australia previews.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
And obviously,
do you think I'll meet a cute guy like Glenn Powell there? Well, I'm like, I don't know, I'm only into Indian guys. Do you think like a Glenn Powell looking Indian man?
If you are an Indian, specifically Tamil boy,
Tamil, please,
who looks like Glenn Powell or any other capybara-esque creature.
Capybara.
If that's you, shoot your shot and go especially to visit her next show.
Please do.
Thank you for watching that Desi Spark. And Abby, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.